Hi, friends. Welcome to The Activity Continues, a paranormal podcast. I'm Amy, the producer and host of this show, along with Megan and the other Amy. We are three soul friends who love to talk about the Dead Files TV show, along with other spooky and spooky adjacent things.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan, our resident scaredy cat. I love this stuff, but it absolutely terrifies me.
Hey, everyone. I'm the other Amy, sometimes referred to as Amy, ABP, or AP, and I'm the voice of reason in the chaos. We're creating a community of like-minded friends who love to discuss all things paranormal.
Along with our thoughts and tangents, you will also hear listener stories and interviews with paranormal professionals, Dead Files clients, and people with personal paranormal experiences.
Come join us, where
the activity continues.
Hi, friends. I just wanted to do a quick little intro to the intro here for this episode. I had this episode all ready to go. I actually released it to patrons, I believe, on Sunday. And Heather and I recorded it last week. And then yesterday, I ended up meeting with one of my sources, who was a wonderful lady who knew Kid Cann. She knew him as Fergie. And we talked about the different stories. We talked about how she knew him, what he was like. And I got to feeling kind of bad about anything derogatory I said about him. And so I just want to say that some of the things, like, I know I've said before that he's full of shit, and he probably was. But I'm feeling kind of bad about saying that now. So, you know, my thoughts could change again. And if any of you listening have any stories for me, good or bad, I would love to hear them. You can call the number in the show notes. The reason I don't give the number is I've changed it a few times, and this is forever. So you'll have to check the show notes because I can change that if the number has to change. So check that the show notes / description of this video for the phone number. And you can always email me at volsteadland@gmail.com. That's not going to change. So, and just either leave me the story or tell me you want to talk. If you're local, we can meet. If you're not, we can do it over Zoom. We can do it over phone. We can do it over text, voicemail, whatever, email, whatever works for you. I want to hear from more people because the story that I have been coming up with is all based on newspaper articles and books. And we all know that those are kind of unreliable. And so I'm asking for your help, your insight, your stories, because I do want a full-rounded version of Isadore Blumenfield's real story. And I'd like both sides. So with that, here you go. Episode 10, the wrap-up.
When I was a child, I ran for the bins. Been so many downs, so many beds. Now I'm coming down, you'll lower your looks. I was born from was deep for your limbs. I'll burn your bones.
Hello, and welcome to Volsteadland. I'm Amy, and this is Heather.
Hello, everyone. We're so glad you're here. Join us as we take a trip back in time to the 1920s and 30s in Minneapolis and discover the city's underworld. If you have not yet listened to the previous episode, The Wum Wing, or any of those before it, you'll probably want to check them out, as there is some stuff there that you'll need to know to get the most out of this one. So sit back, grab a drink of choice, and join us as we start to wrap up the life of Kid Cann and his reign in Minneapolis's underworld.
Okay. Heather, what you drinking?
Well, today I'm having a bourbon and ginger beer with a splash of bitters prepared for me by husband Greg.
All right. And I celebrated my birthday this month by getting diagnosed with diabetes. So I am drinking Bev, which is a sugar-free wine that I started ordering a long time ago. And then I just kind of stopped because I wasn't drinking wine very much. But it looks like that's what I'm going to try to drink more often than not. So
Yum.
cracking it open. They have a bunch of flavors. This one is the California Pinot Grigio. And it's actually really good. They're all good. I really like the one that's called Glitz. It's a sparkling white wine. And they also have a sparkling rosé now too.
Lovely.
So that'll be fun.
Cheers.
Cheers. And I'll put a link in the show notes to Bev if anybody else wants to try it. It's a subscription thing. So you get it delivered to you once a month for, I think it's $47 for 8 cans. And each can is like a glass and a half. So don't be drinking 4 of them and thinking that you've drank 4 wines, because it's really more like a bottle and a quarter. I've made that mistake. So I wanted to mention that we started a Facebook group this week, and it's doing pretty good so far. I just created it, I don't know, Sunday maybe. And last time I checked, we had 60 some people, but Heather said she checked it and there was 80 something, right?
Yep.
I don't have my browser open right now, otherwise I would go check it. But anyway, come on over and chat to crime, Minneapolis history, or any other old
anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah. I mean,
sure.
It's gonna be fun. Most of the people in there are people I know because I invited my whole friends list. But I want people that I don't know in there too. I want to meet new people and people that enjoy the podcast or genres like it. So yeah, I'll put that link in the show notes too. Or you can just go to Facebook and in groups, just search Volsteadland and it'll pop up. Okay, what's next? So I mentioned it was my birthday last week, or actually it was 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago.
Well, it's birthday month still.
It's birthday month, and I celebrate all month. We try and stretch it out as long as possible. And so I treated myself to some new scents from my favorite online perfumery, which Heather
is also my favorite.
Yes, she's the one that turned me on to it. And I had picked one. I got one that I already had a little tiny vial of, because every time you order, they give you a little freebie, a little free vial of something. And so I'd already gotten one called Goth as Fuck, which that's another thing is their names are hilarious. Awesome. And they write stories. They have like a little short story about each scent.
And there's so many scents.
Oh my God, there's so many. And then they have so many that they like stop making some of them for a while and then come back and bring them back. So like my favorite, I think, is, I have a lot of favorites, but my current favorite is the Night King. Ooh. And I love it, but I didn't put the top on all the way one day. And when I picked it up, it was all wet. And I realized that a lot of it had leaked out. It's almost gone and it's discontinued. So that's in the Game of Thrones realm. Series. They have like an Arya and a Sansa, and that's the Night King. And they have Jamie. Oh, I also have Jamie. I like that one too. But anyway, so this time I bought one that I had the little vial for that I liked. And then I decided to just guess based on the scent notes. And I picked one called Ice Witch, that is. And the scent notes, I gave it to Heather because I want her to try it, because I think it would be something that
doesn't it smell a little
lemony?
Yeah.
And
it also, I'm getting some peppermint too.
Yeah. Okay. So it says.
Oh, I like it so much. I've got to get this.
Yeah, it's a good one. So the scent notes are a well-guarded fortress atop an icy mountain. Rich, frothy vanilla laced, a rich, frothy vanilla drink laced with peppermint, fennel, and cardamom. Touches of smoke and incense burns. And I know you don't love incense, but I thought you'd like that because it smelled lemony to me. I know it doesn't say it has any lemon in it, but I thought I know you like stuff that
smells
like
very
soap.
Clean.
Yes, you like soapy,
I like
clean
the clean
stuff.
Yep. And peppermint is my favorite smell.
Yep.
So it's perfect.
Yeah,
I love it.
So anyway, that's good. I just want, this isn't an ad or anything. They don't pay us or anything, but they're a woman-owned, woman-run perfumery in Washington State, I believe. Is that where they're from?
Either Washington or Oregon, I think, maybe.
Okay. But they're awesome. They're great customer service, and they make all these perfumes, like all that they make them right there in their lab. So super cool. So I'll put a link to them too in the show notes, and you guys can try it if you want. The name of the company is Sucre Bay, and it is French for the word bee, as in honeybee. All right. With all that out of the way, let's get into it.
Okay.
Now, this is the last chapter, if you will, of Kid Cann's life. And I thought there was just a few things. I'm like, oh, this is going to take me like 20 minutes. It's like 5 things happened. It's no big deal. And then as I got into it, of course, rabbit hole, rabbit hole, rabbit hole. So there are a couple things that were so interesting that I am going to rein myself in. It's very difficult for me, but I'm going to rein myself in so that I can do a deep dive on some of these things, because I think they're too good to just do 5 minutes. So they're going to have their own chapter, their own episode. And you're working on an episode.
I am.
Already.
I'm doing a deep dive into Machine Gun Kelly and his wife, Catherine.
We first heard about him when you were researching the Urshel kidnapping, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I can't wait. I purposely have not looked into it myself because I want to be surprised. But I do want to see that movie that you sent me the link to.
Yes, that stars Charles Bronson in 1958 called Machine Gun Kelly. It looks kind of horrible, like from a filmmaking standpoint, but also in a fun, good way that will be campy and interesting.
Good.
So I'm planning to watch that this weekend.
Okay, good. Yeah, that sounds fun. I'll probably watch it this weekend too. We can watch it at the same time and text each other. Or you can just come over and watch it. Okay, so we're going to start with 1940. And in September of 1940, there were reports that Kid Cann had been shot. But his brother, Harry, said he's just fine and that they had spent the day together, which then had me going back to that theory that Harry and Izzy, Kid Cann, are often confused with each other because they look alike and they're sort of close in age. And I started thinking, I wonder if Harry even exists and if Izzy wasn't just like using his name. And then, I mean, it's not. I did some digging, and he does show up on the census, along with Isadore and two other brothers, and the sisters. He had 2 sisters also. They're all there until Harry gets married and he's on his own census. So he does exist. I also found his draft card, and I'm gonna put all that up in the video version. So okay, so this is 1941, during the mayoral race, the 2 men who were running were slinging mud, as is usual in these things. But what I thought was funny is that both of them accused the other of being in Kid Cann's pockets and being backed by the Cann element. It's just a minor blip. I just thought that it was funny that he was a big enough deal for the one thing that these 2 mayoral candidates have in common for how to knock each other down is to say, oh, you must be friends with him. You must be in with him. And then, make everybody else not like them for that reason. Next up is the Excelsior Baking Company scandal.
Oh my.
So yeah, this is very convoluted and it's a lot of he said, and it's not super pertinent to Kid Cann. So I'm not going to get too in the weeds about it, but basically the Excelsior Baking Company was a bakery and a factory that was founded and owned by a man named Fewell. It's Fewell. So I think it's Fewell. They were having some labor union issues and the workers were preparing to strike. And if they did, Fewell was told by his business partner, whose name is Tappan, that it would bankrupt the company. So with him being worried about bankruptcy, his partner's son swooped in and bought out Fewell's stock and his own father's stock, being the sole owner of the bakery. And then just 3 days later, the labor issues were resolved and everything was fine.
Like magic.
Like magic. So Fewell sued. I've had 2 sips. Fewell sued his former partner, his son, and his son's wife for basically cheating him out of the shares because they had led him to believe that the shares were worth very little. He had sold them to these guys for $20,000 when they were worth more like $200,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
that's not the way families should work.
No, that's not nice at all. So this is where Kid Cann comes in. Those labor issues. Well, he and his associate, Joey Swartz, had agreed to help negotiate and modify the union contract so that the workers wouldn't strike, but they wanted a great deal of money to do so. So the accountant was told to get the cash and give it to those guys and make it look good in the books, like basically creative accounting. And he was kind of the whistleblower. He finally was like, something's not right here. So Fewell was suing those guys, and that all came up in the trial, and Kid Cann's name came up in the trial a lot. So again, he is very tangential in this one. He wasn't ever charged with anything. And in fact, the labor union official testified at the trial that Cann had nothing to do with the union or any of its representatives. However, I'm guessing that even if he did, he would have said that. There's more to this story, but it doesn't really involve Cann, so I'm not going to get into it now. Maybe we'll do it as a deep dive later, but it's honestly not that fascinating. It's just guys fucking each other over in business, and it happens. Okay, so now in 1946, on December 31st, 1946, so basically 1947, New Year's Eve, a man checked into the general hospital with head lacerations that he had gotten in a fight. He gave the name J.B. Davis and an address of 112 Oak Street. Both were lies. The man, Kid Cann. The address didn't even exist.
Oh, so it was Kid Cann who ended up in the hospital with head lacerations. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep. He had gotten into a fight in a hotel lobby with a man named Rudolph Parapovich, who was a bouncer at a bar. It's probably not a really great person to pick on. There was no police report, but the newspapers reported that he was aided by a few other men. He was brought to the hospital by the police, but no report was ever made. Parapovich says that he entered the hotel lobby and saw a woman he knew, so he started chatting with her. Cann was in a phone booth nearby and said into the phone, "Hold the wire, chickie. There's some wise guy I need to take care of." And then, a wise guy. And then Cann rushed Parapovich and slugged him, even though Parapovich told him he knew the girl and he was just saying hi. As I was looking up something else, I noticed that Chickie is, I assume this is who he's talking to. Chickie is Davy Berman's brother.
Davy the Jew.
The Jew. Mm-hmm. It's his brother, Chickie. And I've got some pictures of them too, which I'll put up.
Growing up, I knew someone named Chickie.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it a guy?
It was a man that, and my father listens to the podcast, so I probably shouldn't even be saying this, but my father did some illegal gambling on sports with a man named Chickie when I was young.
Do you suppose it could have been him? I mean, these guys.
Well, this would be in Boston, so.
Well, they were all over the place.
He was really
Could've been.
old when I was like young. So yeah, he could have been.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Ooh. Ask your dad. Maybe it's him. Is his last name Berman?
I don't know.
Find out. I mean, he was into that stuff, so it's very possible. All right. So I have to believe that there's more here. I'm wondering if Cann was pimping and this girl was one of his and he was protecting her. I don't know. But anyway, the papers reported that Parapovich said, when Cann took a slug at me, I really went to work on him. But a couple weeks later, he denied ever saying that. He even showed up at the paper's office and vehemently denied that he had ID'd the other guy as Kid Cann. He said, I don't know the man I was fighting with, and I never told anyone that I knew who he was. I made no statements as to his identity, except that I didn't know who he was.
People are afraid
Sure,
of
Jan.
Kid Cann.
Yeah. I'm sure he did say that. And then he was like, oh, shit. Witnesses' accounts to the fight were not too coherent, but most of them agree that the opponent was aided by three friends. Also, they agreed that Parapovich was more than a match for Kid Cann, the self-styled pugilist, and his allies. Then it says, in this same article, it says, veteran boxing authorities say they don't remember any boxer fighting professionally as Kid Cann. So I guess we're back to the potty story. Cann himself said that it wasn't him. He says he was in Miami at the time. The police basically said it was Cann, but that it was no big deal. It was just two drunks. And then I pulled out a section from the newspaper that was a Q&A with the police chief. And, it's a Star Tribune reporter who's asking Glenn McLean, who's the police chief. He says, it was just a fight. And then the reporter said, did you know it was Kid Cann who was beat up? And he says, I was told who it was unofficially the next day. Question, did that information make any difference in your attitude when you discovered there was no report on what really took place? No, I turned it over to Bernath. That's a police officer who was on the scene. After all, there was no complaint, no prosecution. Question, isn't it customary for uniformed squads to make out a report in a serious fight in a leading hotel when prominently known characters are involved? Answer, it's not necessarily in the case of a fight when no complaints are made. Question, well, in this case, a man known about town was badly hurt. I should think that the police would have made an exception in such a case and reported it immediately. Don't you think it might have led to more serious trouble? Answer, no, I didn't pay much attention to it, and I didn't know what took place except that 4 men decided to beat up one man and got taken themselves. Question, then you wouldn't want to make an investigation of this? Answer, no. And then the paper says the winner of the fight was still the loser. Parapovich not only lost his job, but was fined $10 on the drunkenness charge.
I think it's so funny that the police chief, who doesn't think this is any big deal at all, bothered to even answer these questions.
I know.
It's like, it seems a little silly.
Yeah. Well, then right after the
but
fight.
Good for the reporter for getting to ask the questions, because obviously they realize that.
Well, I think like, I mean, maybe it's still this way, but I feel like reporters are the only ones that get shit done. I mean, they're the only ones that look into stuff. Everybody else is like, oh, it's no big deal. And then they go, ask the hard questions. But the day after the fight, Hubert H. Humphrey of Airport and Metrodome fame said the police handled, actually that happened way later, said the police handled the case properly and the case was closed. And none of those involved were willing to press charges or testify. The hospital bills for the Cann folks were paid by Abe Perkins, who we also know as Abe Perkansky. He's the one way back in episode 1, I guess. Remember when Charles Goldberg was killed outside the bar?
The bar. Okay. Yeah.
Outside the bar. Yep. It was like the first really big thing that Kid Cann did. And he says the gun just went off when they were scrambling about it. Perkansky is the one who owned the gun.
Oh.
They've been friends for a long time. He changed his name to Perkins. And then I do believe he also is called Monty, because we'll hear about him later too. So Officer Bernath, who was on the scene, referred to Cann as a Sir Galahad, who was only defending a woman's honor. We're going to hear more from him too. So side note, Perepovich was arrested a few days later when a, quote, quantity of merchandise was found in his garage. Some of the merch was gun parts and ammo that was identified as coming from a gun shop that was burglarized in September. So this was January, so a few months before. Also found were wrenches, fans, radios, a new hydraulic jack, electric carpet sweepers, and lampshades. I don't know who he robbed, like a pawn shop. Of the gun parts in his truck, he says, "Do you think I'd be fool enough to carry it around in my car if I stole it?" The reason he was searched at all is that it came to light that he knew a couple of underworld guys. So they went to his house and searched. So then a few days after this fight, Hubert Humphrey changed his tune. The police were reprimanded by him. He said, "Minneapolis has a few persons and characters who have repeatedly come under observation of the police because of their activities. I'm satisfied that some parties involved in the Nicollet Hotel fight have been questioned before by the Minneapolis police. Let the rule of this administration be that such persons be given no special consideration by any member of the police department." And then Chief McLean, who was all, "Oh, it's no big deal," came out and blamed the public and the hotel management for being uncooperative. He pointed out that police officers are individually responsible for their actions and cannot detain anyone without being subject to damage suits or false arrest.
Oh, yeah. Then,
which I find interesting because it's not like that now. Obviously, the police can haul off and murder somebody, and then the union just sticks up for them. So 2 years later, he gets in another fight. And once again, it gets, at the very least, downplayed. So I'll back up a little bit. Cann was in business with a man named Eddie Holman. The company was called Minnesota Machines. It was a pinball franchise and service route. So they would place pinball machines in bars all over town and then to go service them. Holman would collect the receipts, pay the help, and do the books. And Kid Cann and his other partner, whose name is Morris Goldberg, they would lean on the bars, exerting influence to get the machines placed in the most lucrative spots. The rumor is that they wanted to obtain a monopoly on coin-operated devices in Minneapolis. And they kept referring to this as being gambling, but I don't know of any way to gamble on a pinball machine unless you're just like sitting around with a bunch of guys and you bet that you can beat their score or something.
I mean, now there's like video poker, obviously, and slot machines, but I don't think they had those that advanced.
Well, they might, certainly not where the money, would be coming from the machine or whatever. I don't think anyway. I don't know. Maybe that's something we got to look into. But so their partner, Morris Goldberg, this is a side note. He was apparently a go-between in a St. Paul kidnapping in 1931. A guy named Morris Ruttman, who was a former St. Paul bootlegger and currently then a dress shop owner, was kidnapped from his home in St. Paul and released 3 days later. But during that time, he was burned, tortured, and forced to write ransom notes.
Oh.
Yeah, they said that in another article that I read, they poured gasoline on him and then threw matches at him so that it would burn off. 2 St. Paul hoodlums were tried and convicted of the kidnapping, and a number of minor underworld characters were involved. And I have a picture of Ruttman at the hospital. The mayor at the time, Youngdahl, had cracked down on mechanical gambling, and this put Minnesota Machines in a financial rut. So the only hope was for a new mayor to make the town open again. Well, the new mayor had just been elected a month before this incident. His name was Eric G. Hoyer. And those who wanted an open town decided their best chance at prosperity was to select a, quote, reasonable police chief.
Reasonable.
So Eddie Holman had rented the Radisson Hotel's townhouse, which was described as a, quote, swank upper story apartment that cost $35 per day.
That seems like a lot back then.
according to the American Institute of Economic Research, that is $395 in today's money, which is pretty steep. I wanted to find a picture of the inside of that place because I bet it was awesome, but I couldn't find anything. So he rented the suite for 3 days. And during this time, the selection of Minneapolis' new police chief was narrowed down to 4 names, and Mayor Hoyer had not yet announced his choice. So during this time, nightclub managers, people involved in the liquor industry, politicians, and policemen were all visitors to Holman's suite. One paper said, gossip has it that the party was called to carve up the city, assigning certain sections to certain gambling and other illicit interests. Holman denies this. He says it was just a big party that just kept going and going. It was just a party to celebrate the sale of Minnesota machines, and it kept getting bigger and bigger. I don't even know half the bums that showed up. So yeah, Holman sold Minnesota machines. So he owned it with Kid Cann and this other guy, Morris Goldberg. Since the city seemed to be cracking down on gambling and this affected them financially, Cann and Goldberg offered to either buy out Holman or to sell their portions to him. Holman offered them $10K each for their shares. I think it's each, which resulted in a loss for them. But the next day after the deal was made, Holman sold the company to another person at a profit. So Cann and Goldberg believed that the new buyer had fronted Holman the money to pay off the other two. And so then they turned around and sued Holman. And this fight occurred just a few hours after the notice of the suit was served to Holman while he was having lunch at a fancy cafe.
Fancy.
The fight happened at a place called Club Carnival. So this building is on 15th and Nicollet.
Okay.
It is right by
Nicollet Diner.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. It's pretty
Market
close
Barbecue.
to Nicollet. Yep. It's like maybe a block away from downtown. I don't know what direction that is. I'm horribly directionally challenged, but it's a block. If you're driving away from downtown, it's about a block more than that. So this is the building that was the happy hour bar, the Flame. It was known as Kid Cann's headquarters. And then for a long time, it was a tape duplication store. Like you could go in and bring your like cassette tapes and they would put them on to like reel to reel, or take reel to reels and put them on DVDs or whatever. I think it was called Great Tapes or something like that. It was that for a long time. I looked it up now, and now it is a rehabilitation center, an alcohol rehabilitation center, which I think is kind of fitting, seeing as it was. Yeah. So it's a cool building though. It's got like, it's on the corner, and the door is directly on the corner. So it kind of goes like this down the street, and it's got glass block on the sides. It's very deco. It's really cool. I'd love to go in there, but I don't think they'd let me come in and just look around. But anyway, it was owned and run by Abe Perkansky, and who is also Abe Perkins, Monty Perkins. And we'll hear about him in a little bit too. Anyway, so to hear Holman tell the story, it was Kid Cann that invited him to the bar and then beat him up once he was there. Cann says the fight didn't even happen in the bar, but on the street. This is his quote. This guy, Holman, came along popping off at the mouth. He'd been drinking. One thing led to another, and I defended myself like you or anybody else would. And since neither of the men were talking, the story was pieced together from eyewitnesses who were more than happy to tell what they saw. But they were probably, as usual in these cases, a little drunk. The night in question, Holman showed up at Club Carnival between 6 and 7 p.m., and then the reports differ. Most agreed that it was what they called a two-blow affair, with each participant landing a Sunday punch before they were separated.
What is a Sunday punch, do we think?
I assume it's just a good sock to the eye, because they both had black eyes.
Okay.
So Cann was ushered out the back door and his eye was patched. Holman stuck around and got a steak to put on his eye because he's like a walking cliche, apparently. Neither principal in the brief bout was willing to comment other than to volunteer a few words about the ancestry of his adversary. Sugar-free goodness. Okay. This is the 1950s. The feds were investigating Kid Cann all throughout the 50s, trying to find something that would stick. In 1959, it was reported that Kid Cann was planning to move to Miami Beach. His house in Minneapolis had hit the market, and he was going to leave as soon as it was sold. But there were a few things keeping him here. For one, his old buddy / rival, Tommy Banks, was going on trial for income tax evasion, and the judge wanted to call Cann as a witness. He was subpoenaed, so he ended up having to stay in town, but ended up pleading the fifth and refused to even give his telephone number. His brother, Isadore Bloom, was also subpoenaed, and he also pled the fifth. So this was a really busy time for Kid Cann. Not only was Tommy Banks on trial, but so was he for a few kind of major things. So in 1955, it was reported that there had been a grand jury investigation into Cann's financial activities. As you probably know, it's historically been very hard to nab underworld criminals on anything because no one wants to talk. There's all the playoffs and the cover-ups and connections with law enforcement, et cetera. So usually the best the feds can do is to get them on tax evasion. So that's what was happening here.
Huh. Yep.
So the IRS concluded that a top secret investigation into the handling of a $500,000 tax claim against Cann. So he must have been making a boatload of money if he owed $500,000
in taxes. Yeah.
Yeah. In an article in the Star in February of 1955, it mentioned that the IRS had also looked into a well-known Minneapolis restaurant owner. Now, one of my sources mentioned that article, and they said they know who it is. I don't want to say who they thought it was because they might be wrong. But I wanted to mention that I will talk more about this in the last episode that we do, because the last episode I'm planning on just you and I will just go through all of the leads that I got from people,
Right.
all the things people told me. And so we'll get more into that in that episode. So they're mainly concerned in determining if the tax laws were properly applied to the multiple and overlapping interests of these people and in these and other business ventures in the years 1941 to 1947 and subsequent thereto, particularly in view of the decision of the tax court of the United States in the case of Charlie's Cafe Exceptional. So I loved that name.
Yes.
And so I Googled it, and holy rabbit hole, Batman. I was obsessed, and I probably spent like 3 hours just looking at everything about Charlie's Cafe Exceptional. And I ended up with a potato salad recipe.
Ooh.
So more on that. We're going to do, it's going to have its own episode, or at least its own half of an episode, because
maybe we can eat it during the wrap up.
Yeah. yeah. We'll have potato salad and drinks. I did find a handwritten sheet that had the drinks and the recipes on them.
Oh, nice.
It's really hard to read.
Make one and have it with potato salad.
So it's like a Manhattan, an old fashioned, a president. I can't remember all the drinks, but I'll put that up in the video too. But yeah, we can mix up some Charlie's Exceptional drinks and have some potato salad. The key to the potato salad was that they make their own mayonnaise.
Oh, yes.
Which I know you do.
I tell
too.
everyone that's a very, very good thing to do.
Yeah.
It really elevates the recipe.
Yeah. It sounded really good. I can't wait to try it. So anyway, the papers all had a list of people who are on the list for the grand jury. And let's just say that a good portion of that list is Kid Cann's family. His brothers, sisters, their spouses, their kids, their kids, their kids' spouses.
Oh, wow.
And I have, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. That is a family tree that the police put together of all of the Cann folks. The black spots are all the children, I think. So they cut out, they don't show the children, but most of those people were involved in this, and like 3 of them got off. So, there's a lot of people, and it was a family affair. I mean, when they say it was an organized crime family, it was. There was like Perkansky / Perkins and the Bermans. And then everybody else was a Blumenfeld or a Bloom or or married
to a Bloom.
Exactly. So here's another side note. On March 24th, 1955, I found a little blurb that the city council approved a bar license transfer from Dan Schneider to his wife, Mary. The bar is Danny's Bar and Cafe at 14th and Chicago. I looked and it's a parking lot / vacant lot now. The article states that she's the sister-in-law of Kid Cann, but she's actually his sister Mary, who married Dan Schneider. She asked for the transfer after her husband had left the city. He failed to appear before the committee as ordered, but sent a letter from Chicago saying that he is, quote, merely away on a much-needed rest and vacation. The transfer was to become effective April 4th when the license would have expired. So I got to wondering if he really was in Chicago or if he ever came back and like, was he really dead or what? And then I found in July 29th, 1955 newspaper, Mary Schneider and Dan Schneider are listed in the section of divorces granted.
Oh, yep.
So that's that. The grand jury investigation wouldn't come to a close until 1961. But in 1960, the paper reported that the Cann fam had made $990,000 in profits in 3 years.
Wow, that is huge.
Yeah.
For 1960.
Yeah. But still, it seems like 500,000 is a lot of taxes on $1 million.
Right.
But
right.
Maybe they're going way back to other stuff too. I don't know. I didn't catch all the details, but it's all pretty dull and convoluted. We can do a deep dive if need be, but let's just say the whole family was involved. There was a blurb from his lawyer, whose name is E. David Rosen, in the paper saying basically that he feels sorry for Kid Cann.
Oh, poor Kid Cann.
Yeah, here's this quote. Having been with him for a period of almost 2 years in his various troubles, I have watched the man deteriorate mentally. I don't think he's insane, Your Honor, but I have watched him to the point where he doesn't think clearly any longer. He has no perception into the problems that would exist. And it's been one thing after the other, one case after another. And I say, Your Honor, I have watched him go down and down and down. And that's why I say, although I certainly would never condone it, I do feel that I understand it. And I do feel sorry for him. Cry me a river. It reminds me of a few recent cases like the Golden State Killer and the Robert Durst case where I know they're old. And they are probably sick, but I feel like their lawyers and of course the media too, make them like they're feeble old man. And you should feel sorry for them, even though they murdered a bunch of people. You know what?
Right.
Fuck them. Especially Durst. I just found out he has COVID. He probably won't live long.
Right. But I mean, even like Harvey Weinstein, did you see him when he was in court? And he's like like using a walker and they're trying to make him look feeble and
so ridiculous. Nope. We're not buying it. Sell some other shit. Volsteadland is your passport to the dark, boozy, bullet-riddled back streets of the 1920s and 30s in Minneapolis, a city teeming with secrets, speakeasies, and the sinister charm of one of its most infamous figures, Isadore "Kid Cann" Blumenfield. Join hosts Amy, that's me, and Heather as we peel back the curtain on the era where mobsters called the shots, politicians looked the other way, and the Twin Cities were anything but squeaky clean. Pour yourself a stiff drink and step into Volsteadland, where the gangsters wore fedoras, the cops took bribes, and the truth is always stranger than fiction. Recently, we were presented with the opportunity to do a live show here in Minneapolis at the iconic CC Club, which has its own ties to bootlegging and prohibition. We have some amazing guests lined up. Ron DeBellew, author of Minnesota's Most Notorious Mobster, The Making and Breaking of Kid Cann, Michael Greenberg, filmmaker of the short film The Combination, and Paul Maccabee, esteemed historian and author of John Dillinger Slept Here. We will also be inviting guests to come to the stage to tell their stories about this era. This is your chance to hear firsthand from the experts and get your burning questions answered. We hope to see you at the CC Club, May 3rd, 2025. All right. So meanwhile, Kid Cann was doing some other stuff too. Now this story is my favorite just because it's so juicy and salacious. And so I'm totally going to do a whole episode on it because there's way, way, way more than what I've got here. So I'm going to try and make it short and sweet. He was convicted Kid Cann was convicted and sentenced to 2 years for white slavery charges, which is basically prostitution, sex trafficking. It involved transporting a woman to Minnesota for immoral purposes. He actually paid for her to come here for her transportation. He sent her money. It's not like he had her in the trunk of his car, which I totally thought at first. And I'm not making excuses for him. He's a fucking turd in this story. But here's the Cliff Notes. Picture this. I'm Sophia. Picture this. It's November 1953. A young girl going by the name Marilyn Ann Tollefson traveled to Minneapolis for her sister's wedding. Her family was here. She was born and raised here until she was 17, but she was currently living in Newark, New Jersey. She was 20 years old at this time. She met Isadore Blumenfield, Kid Cann, in a cafe in Minneapolis, and they chatted and then moved to the bar next door, had some drinks, and she gave him her number. Well, her mother's number. She was staying with her mom. Like the gentleman that he is, he called her the following Saturday and asked her to dinner. Now, keep in mind, he is married to Lillian at this time, but just casually dating a 20-year-old girl. He's 53 at this time. And maybe Lillian knew about this. Maybe she's on board. I don't know. I can't imagine this is his first fling. So
I would imagine Lillian knew a lot about a lot of things and just knew to keep her mouth shut.
Yeah. You know, interesting though, you know how all the other Blumenfelds put their wives on, like their wives were all involved in stuff. Often they would put their wives' names on their liquor licenses because they were caught as bootleggers. And so they can't have a liquor license. So they would put their wife's name on. She was, as far as I can tell, was never on any of that. I don't know if she was as much a part of all of that as the other wives were, or even the sisters. I don't see her name on anything, but maybe she was, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out why she was married to him. I just don't know why she would be. Anyway, they continued their affair, him giving her money, not necessarily every time they got together, but he helped her get an apartment in Minneapolis because her family didn't approve of her seeing him. Wonder why. And he helped her pay her rent. He took her out to dinner. He paid when they went gambling. Well, things started going sour, and that's a very generous way of saying it. It got very bad, and we'll talk more about that in the deep dive. But she started seeing other men and making money off of them. She would take them to local hotels, but she would still see Cann occasionally, and he would give her $50 to $100 each time. And I looked that up. That is $460 to $900 in today's money. Eventually, she moved on and went to New York. Around 1959, she hit what she called rock bottom, and she reached out to him for help, but he ignored her. And so she reached out to his buddy Perkins, who was Abe Perkansky, because she was told by Izzy that if, don't come to me with anything, go to Abe and he'll figure it out. So she went to him, and he had been helping getting her plane tickets and stuff this whole time. And actually there's another level to this where Abe might've been having a thing with her too. Oh. There's a whole section of like love letters that was found from her to him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we'll get into that another time. So this time, though, Abe told her that Izzy was not going to be shaken down by her anymore, and she needed to leave him alone. So during her testimony at this trial, she said, quote, "I was very sick and I was scared to death and I didn't know what was going to happen to me next." When asked why she was frightened, she said, "Well, number one, from Perkins' tone of voice, the next thing I expected to do was get knocked off."
Knocked off, like killed?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So she went to the FBI and that started the whole process. And so in the 3 months while they were waiting for the trial to start from when she reported it, she was in police custody for her safety.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is all super interesting. There's way, way, way more here, but that's all I'm going to say right now. And we're going to
I'm looking forward to
doing more research on it because I kept getting done. I'm like, oh my God, are you fucking kidding me? And I'm like, I have to stop. There's other stories I have to finish for this, and then we'll get back to that. But which is really hard for me to do. I'm a rabbit hole queen. So, okay, now we're going to go to 1960, where there was a transit company scandal. This is at the same time the liquor probe is going on and the white slavery case. But he is also charged with fraud in the 1960 Twin City Rapid Transit Company scandal. So scrapyard dealers and car companies reportedly cheated their stockholders as part of a conspiracy to get streetcars sold off as scrap metal. So there was a streetcar system.
Yes.
And these people who owned, this is the way I understand it, and I could be wrong, but the people who owned places who would buy and sell scrap metal convinced the city or this company to get rid of streetcars and go to buses instead. And they were like, well, what are we supposed to do with all of these streetcars and all this track? And they would be like, oh, I know a guy who'd buy that from you. And it was them. So Blumenfield and Tommy Banks both held stock in the company. And so they were, it was basically just some nefarious shit to make money and get rid of the streetcar system. A lot of people believe that we would still have a streetcar system today if it weren't for these guys.
Wow. That would be
or
cool.
at least, at least subways, that kind of thing. Or like in Chicago, the L.
Yeah.
So 5 other men were sent to prison, including the president of the Twin City Rapid Transit, but Kid Cann was found innocent of all charges.
Of course he was.
The original Teflon Don. Okay, so in 1961, the liquor trial finally came to a close. Found guilty were Cann and most of his family, plus Brownstein, who was one of the guys that was in that fight with Walter Liggett way back outside that cafe. Edward Berman and Perkins. The ones found not guilty, Morris Fogel, who is the husband of Blanche, who is Lillian's sister. And actually, one of my sources knew Blanche and Morris.
Oh, wow.
I'd gone out to dinner with them, with Fergie. He was being called Fergie at the time, Izzy. And that'll be in that episode too. And Gerald Miller, who is the husband of Phyllis, who is Ethel's daughter. Ethel is Kid Cann's sister. So soon after the trial was over, Monty Perkins / Perkansky and another guy named Constant Custodio were arrested. I know, a great name, right? They were arrested by the FBI on charges that they attempted to bribe the jury, along with Kid Cann. And side note, Custodio's wife was a witness in the white slavery trial. All comes together. So those 3 guys they all tried to bribe the jury in the liquor trial. So in March of 61, the Immigration and Naturalization Services moved to deport Isadore Blumenfield. A show cause order on the convicted former bootlegger in Ramsey County Jail charged that he is subject to deportation because of 2 convictions involving moral turpitude. And the 2 were bootlegging in 1934 and the morals offense in 61, which is a white slavery case. I did read an article saying that they tried to deport him, but that Romania wouldn't take him back. But I don't know if that's true. That was like in a City Pages article or something. So I couldn't find anything in the paper about it. Okay, so this was all really confusing because there were basically all these things going on at once. The white slavery trial, the liquor probe and trial, the transit scandal, and then the charge for bribing the jury in the liquor trial. So here's how it breaks down. This is according to the Minneapolis Star paper. Monty Perkins / A. Perkansky got 3 years imprisonment in the bribery case, no fine in the liquor case, 1 year plus 1 day imprisonment in the slavery case. I don't know what that 1 day was for. Kid Cann got, in the liquor case, he got 2 years and a fine of $20,000. In the slavery case, he got 2 years in prison and a $2,500 fine. In the bribing the jury and the liquor case, he got 5 years imprisonment and $10,000. And in the transit case, he was acquitted of everything.
So do we know how much time he actually ended up doing in total?
He was, in total, he was sentenced to 8 years at Leavenworth, but he was very ill. And so he ended up spending most of that time in the hospital in St. Louis. Here's an example at his sentencing in 1961. So this is before even going to prison. They're talking about his health. And he says, I've been bleeding. It's from an ulcer that has been taken out. 75% of my stomach is taken out and my bladder also. And a gallstone operation back in 41. And the bladder one is only 2 years old. And the ulcer one is only 3 years old. Been May something of this month, I think it was. So like, he's not even making sense. I think his brain was a little bit addled. Right. He said, I've just been passing blood. Yeah, he sounds confused. And especially because after that, the judge says to him, I don't know if you killed Walter Liggett or not. And he jumps in with, no, siree, they told me that before they arrested me even. I didn't, but they indicted me. Mr. Nielsen told me that. So like obviously he's acting like, oh yeah, someone told me that you think I killed. He forgot all about the fact that he was on trial for the murder. I don't know. I think he was addled. I do think he was addled. But anyway, he got out of jail early, probably because of poor health. He only ended up serving 3 years. 3-4 years. He got out in September. Yeah. He got out in September of 1964 and went to Miami Beach, where he remained working with Meyer Lansky. But he was in such poor shape, I can't imagine that he could have done too much. This is from Wikipedia. They reportedly continued, they meaning him and Meyer Lansky, they reportedly continued to make money through illegal activities, though they changed tack, focusing instead on stock market fraud, money laundering, and questionable real estate dealings. He frequently visited his family and friends in Minnesota and declared to a Minneapolis reporter in 1976 that he had recently turned down an offer to write his memoirs.
Damn, that would have been a good read.
Right? He said, I have nothing to say, really. I bet I could have gotten him talking. He died in Minneapolis at Mount Sinai Hospital of heart disease in the summer of 1981. Now, I looked at Mount Sinai because I didn't know we had a Mount Sinai, but we did. It dissolved in 1991. It was on Chicago and 22nd.
Oh, okay. I know what that is.
And then it got woven into the whole HCMC universe. He is buried at the Edath Jeshurun Cemetery at 56 in France in Minneapolis. And we got to go visit.
Yeah, we should do that maybe this weekend.
Yeah, I was thinking that too this weekend because it's going to be beautiful out with all the leaves changing and everything. And so, yeah, I think we should go do our little field trip.
Should we bring flowers?
Yeah, why don't we? Why don't we bring flowers? At his sentencing, the judge asked him, Mr. Isadore Blumenfield, do you have anything to say? He said, yes, sir, Your Honor. I realize that this is serious, and all I can say is that I've destroyed myself. I've destroyed my family. I've destroyed my nephews, nieces, and little ones coming up, and I'm terribly, terribly sorry. And that's about all I can say.
Oh.
So he felt bad, I guess.
Yeah.
Knowing that he's getting hauled off to jail.
Too little, too late.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, he's a fascinating guy. Fascinating. And he did, as we'll talk about in the next episode where I, bring in all the stuff from the sources. He did do a lot of good stuff. He did a lot of good things for people, but he also did ruin a lot of people's lives and break a lot of rules.
Laws. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. That's it.
All right.
Join us next time when we go through all of the people who have reached out to me over the last year, I guess, with their emails, voicemails, phone conversations, text messages, etc. I did have a couple of sources that were really great and they knew a lot of stuff and then they just dried up. They just ghosted me. So they gave me some stuff at first, but not much I can use because they were like, I'll get back to you on that. And then poof, which I'm not surprised, to be honest.
Right.
Nobody wants to get in trouble. And I don't want to get anyone in trouble. So yeah, but there's still some good stuff. And so we'll be talking about that next time. And then we're going to take a little break. And then we're going to get into the deep dives. And those are going to be pretty exciting, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Volsteadland. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and visit us on all of our social media platforms for extra content. Volsteadland is produced by me, Amy, at Whimsical Productions and is part of the Collected Sounds Network. Thanks for listening. Okie doke.